Hey everyone, looks like we have a few people starting to come in. We'll just give it another minute or so for a few others to join us, and then we will get started. All right, we will go ahead and get started. More people will be joining, but I did want to start out by saying if you have any questions, we are going to have some time left at the end of the webinar to have some question and answer sessions. So feel free to put that into the chat or submit a question if there's something that you wanted to have discussed or talked about later on during that session. So we will go ahead and get started. This session is also being recorded, so we will be happy to share it out afterwards to anybody that wants to maybe watch it again or share it with somebody else who is not able to be with us today. Then we will definitely get that link over to you. So we will get started. Thank you for joining today. My name is Craig Powell. I am the General Manager of North America for printIQ. And you have joined a webinar today about the biggest obstacles that owners face when making the decision to change an MIS platform. The reason why we like to have this conversation is because it's something that in the early stages when someone's looking into switching to a different platform or putting one in maybe for the first time inside their business, they're hit with lots of things that they have to consider, challenges, roadblocks, things that they want to feel confident about before they make that decision to ultimately move. So the purpose of this today is to just share with you over the course of time some of those things that we have seen or discussed during our time talking with people along the way. And it's kind of interesting for myself because I am somebody who I've been on both sides of the fence. I was in production for a lot of years. I've been in the industry over 20 years and actually even put in printIQ and other systems like it over the years as a user, as a customer before I ever joined the printIQ team. So, I remember going through this journey as well. So some of this stuff is top of mind for me because it's things that I went through, as well as again, conversations we've had as we have calls and discussions with people in different parts of their journey along the way. So just to get started really quick for anybody who has never talked with us, here at printIQ, the reason that we've got some ability to talk to this is because we've had lots of success over the years since 1999 of putting in our system, putting in our platform as the core part of companies in the printing industry. Since 1999, we're a cloud-based solution, so we've seen our platform used in all different sizes of shops, all different types of printing. We're one of the only ones in the industry who can really mix and match all of the different disciplines of printing inside of the same platform. And we've now been able to do that for hundreds and hundreds of customers all across the globe, where we operate out of 3 distinct regions within the company, 5 different countries we have staff. So it's been interesting because of that along the way, we've been able to hear all kinds of stories. So this is free advice for you today, I would say, regardless of if you buy printIQ. We like to share knowledge, to have conversations with people. And although, of course, we'd love to talk to you, I want to give you examples of how printIQ does it along the way, just so you can have it as a frame of reference. Maybe if you're early or, comparing it to your existing platforms and processes, just as another point to, compare to what's possible out there. So it is our goal to help educate and empower you. So let's go ahead and get started, by sharing some of that advice. The print industry, it's constantly evolving. We know it's all the time you're needing to adapt and change to different things that are thrown at you as business owners, to adapt to the environment that we're in. The pandemic, of course, is the most recent example of kind of a shakeup in the industry where we all had to figure out ways to maybe do things differently, to do them smarter, to streamline operations. So now more than ever, the conversation is always around what do you need to do to adapt and change? And that includes things like your management information system, your MIS. It's vital to the core of your business. So switching from one system to another, it's a major decision, one that can have, huge impacts on the success of your company. But we know that making that switch is not always as straightforward as it seems. So we're going to cover today some of the biggest obstacles that owners or managers may face ultimately when making that decision to change their MIS platform. So we're going to give you 5 today, but of course there's many more. Usually these can go in lots of different directions depending on your specific business, the complexities of your business and what you do. So these are just 5. There might be more. They might not be in this order, even as it were, and they might be completely different. If you have one that's different, again, feel free to reach out to us. If you want to discuss that more, put it in the chat if it's something you want to talk about towards the end of the call. We always love hearing about everyone's journey along the way. So to kick things off, though, we're going to start with cost, which is probably no surprise there, right? I mean, cost, it's always about money. What does it cost to invest in something? What is it going to cost you over the long haul? Not just the upfront investment, but what does that mean in the long haul? And that initial investment, of course, the purchase price can be substantial of any MIS platform, not only the software, but in some cases, the hardware that's required, as well as any of the licenses that are needed. When you're comparing platforms in the industry, there's different methods, some of which are physical programs that you have to install as a client on a computer that connects to a server that physically has to be hosted inside your building. So think into those kinds of things, the hardware, the infrastructure that you need to have those servers, as well as the upkeep and ongoing maintenance of those servers and equipment. Do you have staff to maintain those, or do you have to outsource that potentially to an IT consulting company? Lots of things to decide in there. One of the things that's really great and freeing, as it were, with our customers and those that we're discussing bringing printIQ on board with, is the fact that we are cloud-based. So sometimes cloud-based can be a good solution for you because it frees you from the cost of having that physical hardware, as it were. It allows you to be hosted in the cloud. We host in Microsoft Azure, and that also gives us the ability to scale up or down on the performance needs throughout the day, potentially even, or for a busy season, let's say for a month or a few months throughout the year. If you need to scale up, you can definitely do that, as well as scaling back potentially if that makes sense for your business. So something to think about there for the initial investment from a hardware standpoint. The other thing, though, I'd say from that initial investment is, of course, just the raw cost of the software to buy it, whether that be licenses or the initial purchase of how that works. Having the flexibility there to decide what you need for your business key. One thing to keep in mind is some companies, like what we do at printIQ, would offer you the ability to have either an upfront investment, which is going to be obviously more upfront, but you're going to buy into the usage of that software directly right out of the gate. As opposed to, we also offer SaaS purchase models. So that could be something that works well, which is kind of in line with the software industry as a whole, where it's moved to software as a service, which allows you to just build in that budgeted cost over the life of the time that you anticipate using that software. So just some things to consider about what might make sense for you. A lot goes into that, and of course, that's a decision you have to make based on your particular business. But beyond, buying the system, the installation and setup is something you have to be mindful of, because installing and configuring it to fit your specific needs, it can, add to that initial financial outlay. So this might include customizations to tailor the system to your business's unique processes, as well as just doing the initial install, the implementation of everything and getting it ready. We've unfortunately heard horror stories over the years of people who made an investment and maybe they chose to go with a platform because it was really low cost. It was just something that's like, wow, that's ridiculously cheap. Let me go ahead and buy that. They quickly found out then that they were handed a PDF download essentially of a user manual and best wishes, good luck, hope you can implement it. because there was lacking in the process of working with the company. For those that have a lot of time, maybe have the skill set to do that and figure it out, that could be something that works for you. It might be something you're able to make happen over the course of some weeks. But in most cases, there's so many moving parts when it comes to putting in an MIS platform, from getting the equipment set up to getting all of the operations and the processes, the people components, all of the things that go into how you price jobs inside of your shop. It's just a lot of data that needs to be gathered, a lot of things that need to be done. So be mindful of what you're walking into there in regards to the complexity of the project as you need it. We'll talk more about this in a little bit, but one of the things we've found helpful over the years with printIQ is we take the approach of a shared build concept where we're dedicating some resources to you from our side of people who've gone through these builds dozens and dozens of times and have taken companies all the way from start to finish. And so they're there to help guide you, but also to teach you along the way so that you're empowered to work into the platform, so that you don't always have to have someone holding your hand, which can just add to that overall cost as you go. But you're actually working in a platform where you feel comfortable adding new code, adding on capabilities as you go through the process of growth in your business. So just always keep that in mind. Is it something where you're going to feel comfortable long term with the setup of anything that is needed? That kind of all spills over into that long-term return on investment, the ROI. But I also like to say ROI is the reality of your investment. So what does that mean for your business, both financially, but also the impact to the business on addressing the needs that you have, the supporting the workflow, the whole entire reason you're trying to streamline things and put it in the first place. Because while that upfront cost is significant, the installation costs and time that you put into it can be significant. It's important to consider the return of that overall. Is it improving efficiency? Is it reducing waste inside of your operation? Is it enhancing your ability to make those informed decisions? All of those things can lead to savings and costs, which offset, of course, that investment that you make into the platform, both upfront as well as long term for the life of your business. You may also get into new areas over time. Referencing again the pandemic, we know that some companies had to pivot. They had to, go into new areas, maybe start producing things that they had never done before. In some instances, companies used it as an opportunity to buy up other companies in order to get into a space, with an existing customer base, let's say. All of those things need to be taken into consideration. Is your platform something that is able to add on that functionality later, or are you looking at having to make another change just a few years down the road if something like that happens? Being able to plan for the future is definitely something to take into consideration when outlaying the investment from a time and money standpoint along the way. Lastly on this is the unexpected costs. So to kind of build on what I was just saying, with maybe functionality or equipment that you add on over time, unexpected costs are often overlooked. There's issues that arise during maybe the migration of data from old systems to new, or additional training. Staff that maybe was trained and comfortable in using the system, they're going to potentially leave over time, or further customizations, if that's even possible in your platform, that are needed along the way. Again, at IQ, we try to take the approach of having a system that we give you a lot of power right out of the gate. The source core code of printIQ is an engine that's powerful enough to be put in all kinds of different environments. But then during the implementation process, really you're starting with a blank slate, and it's being customized to your environment, your processes and equipment, your people, your products, everything that you do is being customized. But then building on top of that, we're very open to the idea of customization in our system, whether that be something we put on our roadmap long term to bring functionality in, a couple of versions from now, or if it's something that's needed sooner. We have a well-defined process that allows us to partner with you to get that investment, upgraded and have that functionality come sooner. Just be mindful of, you may run into those kinds of things. Is the partner that you're choosing someone who's going to be open to that process, or are they rigid and are just going to tell you no? Nothing. It is what it is. You bought what you bought. There's no path forward on getting that functionality in the future. Just definitely something to be mindful of. And the last thing I'd say on this one is that quote there, which I'm sure you've all heard many times before, that if you think it's expensive to hire a professional, wait until you hire an amateur. If you aren't vetting and partnering with somebody who has been through this, has a proven track record of success, everything may turn out fine. You may save a whole lot of money, but you may pay for it either in time or functionality or growth potential down the road. All right. So the next thing that we want to talk about is time. We already kind of talked about it because we all know time is money. As Benjamin Franklin said, time is money. Waste it now, pay for it later. Um, the time commitment is something I would say even more than cost sometimes that people underestimate when it comes to what's needed to take you through an implementation period of putting in software. So, transitioning into a new MIS platform, it's the core really of your business. It's something that's going to serve as the main cog that all the other wheels of your business are going to connect to. So it isn't a quick process. It can go in phases for sure. There's parts of it you could maybe bring online sooner than others. But from the day you decide to make the switch to the day you go live, it can range from a few months to sometimes a year. And that's just the reality of it. And there's a complexity there, to try to consider when you're talking about the resources that are needed. Make sure that the partner that you select has a well-defined roadmap for what that looks like. They're able to clearly define what's needed, each step of the way, and that they're honest with that. Because again, based on those complexities, based on what you do, there's some things that are straightforward, and there's some that you just need to have all of your ducks in a row before you, try to go down that path. At IQ, we try to be robust with that, and that we assign a project manager to a project, so that during that implementation, you've got somebody who's corralling all of the different steps along the way, consulting both internally and externally with you to be able to keep track of how things are moving along the way. If the data is flowing and that the people that are helping do the build have the data that they need about the equipment and the operations, those things can move a lot quicker than if you don't know what you don't know and you start that process, and you have to figure out what you need to get before you can even get started along the way. So dedicating people that are knowledgeable about your business, that are able to get that information, is absolutely key. It's not realistic sometimes from a people standpoint. We completely understand that you can dedicate somebody 100% full time every single week to work on this. In an ideal world, that would be pretty great, as if somebody could do that. But IQ, what we found over the years is that shared build concept really works well because it allows for us to both work with you live on the meetings that we schedule during the week to make use of those couple of hours every single week that we're meeting. But it also allows us to say, okay, for the next meeting, here's the homework, if you will, that you need, so that those people on your side of things can go to all the necessary departments. They can go get that information and really have that ready to go so that you're not losing time. And you have the best shot possible of maybe speeding up that implementation period as much as possible there. There is obviously such a thing as too long, but the flip side of that is there is such a thing as too fast. So having a clear path, having a plan, and making sure that we're following the right path is absolutely key. So I definitely recommend to you to make sure that whoever you partner with has got that plan in place to help guide you along the way. The other part of this is operational disruption. So during this period, your business operations can potentially be disrupted. So that plan that I was just talking about becomes even more important, because we know that while you're dedicating time to building out this new path forward, this new part of your business, all the existing stuff, the old software, the old processes, work still has to happen, right? The show must go on inside of your business. And so you have to make sure that you plan for those things. It's crucial because running systems along the way where you're comparing maybe to the old, both for validating that you're moving in the right direction with the new, maybe when it comes to pricing, especially, but also validating the improvements that you want to make. So, you're making the decision, of course, to change from your existing software or operations to something new. You're doing that for a reason. You're looking to improve things, to streamline, make sure that you are building in all of those good things that are happening for the growth of the platform as well along the way. One thing to maybe consider and to discuss with whatever vendor you choose is the possibility of running in parallel for a little while if possible. We recommend, validating again, run a quote in the old system, run one in the new, but take it a step further, I would say. You want to feel confident with not just getting the price right, which is obviously of the utmost importance, but making sure that all of the steps then that job needs to go through after it's converted from a quote into an order, everything is there from a workflow standpoint, all the way from the production through to the delivery to the customer along the way. So be mindful of those things from an operational disruption, and just compare and contrast to where you've been and ultimately where you want to go in that way. And the last thing that really kind of encapsulates both of those points is just milestones and planning. Plan, right? Setting clear milestones and having a detailed project plan, they're essential. It helps track progress, ensures that the train stays on schedule, and ultimately is successful as much as possible along the way. All right, the next thing, training. So as I've alluded to a little bit before, we operated IQ off of the idea that we're doing a shared build. And part of that is because resources on your side of things would be working with resources on our side of things. They're learning about how the software works. They're learning about the way to set up equipment, operations, to import materials, all of the different things that are needed for the system to work in the way that it's supposed to. So we work with those people that we identify as super users, power users, if you will, inside of there that are going to be the go-to people on your side of things to be able to then sell the vision to train the trainer. So we're training them to be able to then go out to others along the way. However, we know the learning curve is great, and the learning needs will be different depending on who is going to be interacting with the system along the way. So every MIS has its learning curves. Some systems are more intuitive than others, and it takes time for your team to learn the platform, regardless of what it is. Learning is going to be there along the way. But again, the thing that I think you need to remember here is making sure that you are comfortable and confident from the very early stages all the way through the build. Stay engaged, stay part of that process. Choose a vendor that dedicates those resources. As I mentioned, we do at printIQ, a project manager that's dedicated, an implementation specialist that's dedicated to the build. And then they're even consulting with a broader team of people, depending on the needs that you have. We bring in integration specialists. We bring in a team of other people along the way. Make sure that you've got that in there so that you're baking in as much intuitive, process into your product. So as you customize your MIS, you're really honing it to work exactly like you want it to inside your business. You want to make sure that that's done in a way that your existing people and any future people along the way can look at that and say, okay, that makes sense to me. And we always try to consult with people to align that so that work flows through the platform as organically as possible in the way that you do things inside of your business. Also, though, training resources, I'd say, are key to keep an eye on that. So ensuring that, comprehensive training is there, both from the hands-on shared build that we've been talking about, but then also long-term, is there a knowledge base? Is there video content? Is there webinars, maybe, right? Is there ongoing things like user groups that you've got access to that, both online, maybe in a forum, as well as in-person events, potentially at trade shows? Are there resources there? Now, there's always more to do on resources. No company is probably perfect with how they handle, knowledge base. Information is changing all the time. We definitely are always mindful that we need to do better, and we're stepping up as much as possible always to push it forward. Just make sure that whatever vendor you choose is taking the same approach of trying to create content that's relevant and valid, both for the initial early stages, but also along the way. Not always for the things that are broken and need fixed, but even long term, like where are you pushing the system in the future? What things are coming down that you want to be mindful of? Because again, maybe you're going to start doing new products or you're going to buy a business. Make sure there's content coming out, discussions happening that's a free flow of information so that you feel confident in the long term for the partner that you've selected to be in partnership with for years. Potentially you're going to be partners for years, so be mindful of that. And that really flows into, again, the continual support, ongoing support, from a help desk standpoint for the most immediate things that may be broken, making sure that you've got access to get their attention, to get them on fixing something if it's needed, as well as, again, dipping back in for robust training that's needed down the road. New versions come out all the time, right? New functionality, as well as we mentioned earlier, staff may leave over time, and you need to have refresher training sessions with people. At IQ, we can do this both remotely as well as on site. If that makes sense for you, we can send somebody there on site to be able to consult with you and work with your team there. So just make sure, again, the vendor you choose has got those resources available so that you feel confident and comfortable in who you're partnering with along the way. This quote I've always liked: give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. You always want to know that there's stuff coming. You always want to be tweaking and working to build your system like you need it to be, both now and for what's potentially coming tomorrow. The idea that an MIS implementation is done is actually not accurate. It's never truly done. You get to a point where you're live and using it every day in your environment. You're putting jobs through it. You're happy with how things are going. But you're always going to be working to develop and build it, for what you'll need tomorrow as well. So just be mindful that your vendor gives you those resources along the way. Next category is integration. So we all would love the idea that there's one MIS platform to rule them all, and you buy one and it does everything you need plus make you coffee along the way. But we know that that's just not reality. It may never be reality that you've got one platform that can do absolutely everything. However, I think it's key to remember that if you are choosing a platform like an MIS, it is becoming a very core part of your business. I alluded to earlier the idea that it is the main cog that all the other wheels are built on. And that's absolutely true. So you really should think of it, instead of one piece of software, as one platform that is touching key parts of your business. So you know that you're building in all of the data so that it can do the estimating right from the get-go. But you also want to be mindful that it can then create a functional order with the corresponding job tickets and other information that your production team will need to actually fulfill on that order. You also need to be mindful of tracking the costs of that order along the way, logging the material usage, the time that is needed for you to understand, this is how I quoted it. Now what's the reality of how I actually produced it, right, along the way. And then ultimately the delivery of that product, the shipping, the pickup of it, if that's what it is, through to the ultimate invoice so that you can actually, get paid and stay in business, right? So a product like printIQ, an MIS that's robust, it's already touching off on all of these key core areas of your business. But we know that there's a whole host of other things that over time, either currently or in the future, you're going to need for printIQ to talk to in some fashion or another, or whatever MIS you choose. It's going to need to bring orders in, let's say, from a web to print platform or some other type of e-commerce platform. It may also need to bidirectionally push information into another platform to update the production status or the tracking numbers, let's say, for the order that is, processed and shipped out. So being mindful of the compatibility of what is the stance of the platform that you're choosing, the company that you're working with. It needs to be compatible both with your existing software, including everything from accounting. Is it able to push all of that financial details down to the final resting place of the accounting software, whether that's QuickBooks or Xero or whatever it is that you use? Is it able to integrate with those to push that information down inside of there? Is there, really just the ability then to add on in the future, maybe new things that you get into? I've said it lots of times, but you're always going to look to add new products potentially, or go into new markets, or buy existing companies, and then integrate them into your business. Is it able to do that? Is it closed off, or is there functionality there for it? And part of that then spills over into the data transfer and access to that data. So being able to, collect data inside of your platform, to store that data inside of there, but then potentially transfer that data in several different ways is something to be mindful of. So one thing that we do at printIQ, in addition to the framework, which I'll talk about in a second, is the ability to, you can import information in lots of ways, whether that be equipment or processes or inventory, for instance. You can import those things in as spreadsheets. You can also export in lots of different areas of IQ back out of the system as spreadsheets as well, or potentially into other file formats. So having that flexibility to get info in, but equally important is to be able to get that information out and have access to your data, because really data, it's like the new oil, right? Or the gold standard. Data is the most valuable thing in your business in a lot of ways. So being able to get that should be a major concern to you. Make sure that it's not closed off in that fashion. But not only transferring out, but maintaining it for integrity and for accuracy purposes. Just make sure you have that oversight to do that. The other things I'd say to be mindful of here is when we talk about data access, that could come in the form of reports that are ran by, maybe custom queries to the database. We facilitated this in lots of different ways at IQ over the years, whether that be reports built directly in the platform, which we currently have an embedded reporting engine. We're even looking for the future of where that's going with a more robust tool, even in coming versions over the next little bit of time. So we're looking to always have better ways for, data, business intelligence and analytics and all of that inside there, to build reports that allow you to have actionable information about what's going on inside of your business. Always make sure that whatever platform you choose gives you that capability and access inside of there. Beyond that, this will talk again a little bit about the framework of there's lots of ways as well to have API calls to be able to push and pull information inside of your business into those other platforms, whether they be on the front end or somewhere in the middle or on the back end of things. Is there an open API framework there? Is there, webhooks and a robust library of calls that are available, where either if you want to work like with IQ, for instance, we have people on staff that can potentially help with that. We can scope out that integration. We can talk about what that looks like. Even if we've never done it before, we're happy always to take a look at it and see what's possible, figure out the approach of how we would do that for you to be able to do it. Or alternatively, I would put our API framework as the most robust in the industry, being able to give you access to it, as well as give you resources for a library of what those calls are, provide that information so that if you have someone on staff or you yourself have that capability and knowledge and skill set, you could even take and run with it. We've been surprised before at what some customers have been able to do with integrations. They've gone and done things that we, officially have never done because they had the framework there. They had the skill set and knowledge and staff to be able to do that. We actually encourage that. We're not mad about it. We're open to the idea that you can take that and use it in all kinds of new ways that maybe we haven't even envisioned. I would just strongly recommend for a vendor to support you that they be cooperative in that space. They can guide you if needed along that way, or if you want to do it yourself, they're going to ensure that you have all the tools that you need and access to that information to be able to get that done inside of there. Just as I was mentioning, this isn't all of them, but we already have existing integrations with lots of different platforms. Always are in talks or in the process of building out new integrations all the time. Some of these partners have become very robust partners with us, and then we've got lots of really cool things happening with them. So I would encourage, maybe if you're reviewing another vendor platform, ask them to provide you examples of the things that they've done and the partners that they're currently using, so that you can have an idea about what's possible, both today and in the future as you move forward. All right, we have come to the last point that I wanted to raise today on challenges that you may face when making this decision. And you have to understand the risks. There's risk in every single one of the points, of course, that we talked about already on this webinar. But from a more high level, let's talk about the operational risks. The day-to-day to your operations during the switch. So the downtime that you need, the possibility of if not data loss, data not being converted in the right way to get inside of there. This really speaks more to the idea of working with someone who has a plan in place, who's done it before, as we talked about earlier, from a project management standpoint, from a resource allocation standpoint, of putting the right people both on your side as well as the vendor side to be able to work together, making sure that all that's there. Because if you have a plan and you know what you're looking for and you know ultimately what you want to achieve, the chances of the risk to your operations of not having something in the new system that you used to have in the old are greatly diminished. There's always the potential for stuff to get missed, of course. But if you have the right plan and you have the right skill in place, it greatly improves the ability for you to limit those risks to your business. If you are trying to do something yourself with no support, you're given a manual and saying, best of luck. Chances are you may miss something because you're not working with a team that has done it many, many times before. The other thing is change management. And, the human factor, it can't be ignored in these things. We talked about it from a training standpoint just a minute ago, but resistance to change from your team can derail both the implementation as well as the success ultimately of you launching it inside of there. So effective change management strategies are crucial. I can speak to this one again from personal experience in that if you're not involving the right people, if you're not getting them exposure to what you're doing, both the functional how of what you're doing, but also the reason of even why you're doing it. We're streamlining this because it's causing this problem, and we're going to do it this way because it's going to help us in this way. Even sharing those kinds of things along the way help to get your team and your managers and everybody who's involved in the success of the platform kind of on the same page to make sure that you're rowing in the same direction, as it were. I often say to people that the process of rolling out a new MIS into your live, production environment, it's as monumental a task as building it in the first place in a lot of instances. We've seen, struggles sometimes along the way where you get it all up to a certain point where you're ready to launch it. And then because maybe you didn't involve people early enough, they're like, what is this? I've never seen it. I don't know why we need to switch. People are always going to default a lot of times to what they know, right? Because that's comfortable. That's true in a lot of things in life, but it's even true here where they've got enough on their plate every day. So the thought of having to change, the system that they work in is not entirely appealing to them unless you help include them along the way so that they build comfort over time. So get that buy-in, get cooperation from all of the people, departments, and levels within the organization. You'll need some champions, of course, to be able to do that, from the initial decision makers of buying the platform in the first place. But you need to have them be involved and include other people along the way to sell that dream of why. The other part I'd say is contingency planning. So this is a big thing, especially in our industry. We know that there's not always a fresh supply of new blood coming in to the industry. Over the years, you've got people now who are looking at retirement either now or in the future. or maybe they get hired away, right, to another place. Maybe they just decide they don't want to do printing anymore and they want to go do something else with their lives. You never know what's going to happen. There's all kinds of reasons people leave, but having a backup plan is essential, both from obviously the people standpoint of replacing them with a person, but I'd also flip it a little bit to say contingency from when you're choosing the platform. Is it working towards something where you are baking in some of that historical knowledge about how you price things, about how the equipment operates, about how the operations are? If you do it right and you choose a platform that is robust enough, you're kind of taking the brain of some of that, right? That historical knowledge, and you're building it into a software platform that allows you to be able to retain some of that functionality and information. So, you know, you're already planning for the future by making that step. But taking it a step further when choosing the actual platform that you're going to use and the vendor partner that you're going to select in order to do that, what will you do if the new system fails? So I mentioned earlier we host predominantly in Microsoft Azure, although we do have a small percentage that self-host on site, physically on premise. But in the case of the Azure, where we're handling that hosting for them, we've got some contingency planning even built in there, right? Where there's backups happening of the database. We've had something a year or so ago where a customer had some type of a cyber attack, took their entire site down. Luckily, it was less than 2 hours. We were able to spin up a new one and have them going again because we have those safeguards in place. Just ensure if you're going to host physically yourself that you've got that type of a setup and plan in place, or the partner vendor that you're choosing has already thought about that for you, so you can rest a little bit easier knowing that those backups and things are happening inside of there. The last 2 points I'd say on that are, you make a decision today or tomorrow for something that makes sense for you today or tomorrow, maybe from a functionality standpoint. But what happens if you choose to partner with a go stale on their development cycle? Maybe they are lax to ever release new features. You buy it today, and 6 months, a year, 2 years, or more from now, it's essentially the same as it was the day that you bought it. Now, some instances, maybe you buy that, it had a singular use case. That could be what someone's looking for. But chances are you're not looking to make an investment into something that never will change. It never can be evergreen. There's always better ways to do things, improvements that need to be made, bugs that need to be fixed along the way. Make sure that you're partnering with a company that's not going to be gone tomorrow. They're not, working with developers that, maybe you're outsourced, fly by night, as it were, and the chances of them closing up shop are likely because maybe those sources dry up, let's say, over time. We approach this from IQ in that we have all of our own developers in-house on staff. They're dedicated. They only work for IQ. That's what they do. We are robust in our development cycle, and that we're pushing to release one major version and up to two minor versions every year, where we're delivering functionality both broadly in the major versions, as well as potentially customizations and other smaller things in the minor version releases, along with the necessary patches every few weeks that are needed for fixes and other things that are found along the way. Just make sure that you're holding the vendor to that standard of that they are developing new things, they are rolling out new functionality, because unfortunately we've heard horror stories about people that made that investment and they're just not getting any support long term, as it were. So we all know growth, it requires discomfort. So everything that we've talked about along the way, they can be scary, they can be big things that need to be considered. But ultimately, in order to take it to the next level, we know you got to go through some of that discomfort. Just make sure the vendor, the partner that you're using, has a plan in place for you to help guide you along the way, to minimize the risk and minimize the loss of time and money, and is there to partner with you for the long term, so that you've got someone in place that can deliver a platform that you can rely on for many years to come. Careful planning, clear understanding of all these things, you are setting yourself up for the best case for success. And the goal is to boost your efficiency. So if you choose the right vendor, you're in the best place. in order to do that. So let's remember that it's ultimately like climbing a mountain, but every mountaintop is within reach if you just keep climbing. So we're happy to do that. We're happy to continue that conversation, obviously. But this is also just good advice that I would say you could use, even if you don't go with printIQ. These are things to keep in mind, things that you'd want to consider so that you can maybe learn from the past of others who have gone through it along the way. All right, so we do just have about 15 minutes left, but I will open it up for if anybody in the chat would like to put any questions in. We're happy to talk those things through. If you don't do that here on this call, we'll be sending the recording of this out, and we'll also have contact information in that email. We'd love to continue the conversation with you to not only clarify maybe things that were said on this call, but specifically even hear your use case, your business, learn more about what you're looking at as far as challenges and maybe what you should consider and how IQ does it, if that's helpful to you. We always love to do that. If you're an existing customer, obviously we would love to continue to support you and talk through these things. If there's anything you'd like us to clarify on, we are happy to do that. All right, so we had a question come in of who is Banyan Software and how do we know that they will not resell your company in the near future? Great question. Thank you for submitting that question. So we were acquired by Banyan Software in 2022. And the short answer of it is that's not how Banyan operates. They invest in companies that are successful, that have a track record of being successful and giving great support and delivering on a great product. And they invest in those companies for the long term. They're a buy and hold for the long term type of a company. So they are not looking to flip it within a couple of years. And just since 2022, we feel that operationally as well. They're very good partners in that they are believing in our vision and empowering us to deliver on that vision. So that is not a concern. It's a great question because that's definitely something that we've heard as horror stories, as it were, in the past. So great question, but we're very confident in Banyan as our partner. All right. All right. How big is your customer base in North America, label companies specifically? So over the last several years, we have been pushing more into the label space. A lot of functionality has been delivered in the last couple of versions of printIQ, along with even more functionality that's label specific coming out in the next major version happening in the next month or so. So labels is definitely a growth market for us, and that we're looking in that. Our customer base in North America, it makes up overall about 30% of our overall customer base. But it is our growth market. So as a trajectory, we're adding on customers in North America quite aggressively. We've been growing a lot since we started over here in North America, and we have several larger label companies that are currently in the process, as well as some smaller ones as well that maybe do labels as part of their operation and not just that as a business. So we've been able to bring on functionality both for traditional flexo as well as digitally printed labels produced a lot of different ways. All right. Any other questions? So again, if you don't think of a question now and maybe you think of it later after the webinar is done, we definitely will be following up with the recording for this and would be happy to continue that conversation with you guys. You coming to the webinar today, spending a little bit of time with us talking through it. We'd love to hear your story. We'd love to get your feedback on you've already bought IQ, maybe why you chose it, how did it align with this list, what are things that weren't on this list. And if you're currently in the market, again, we would love to consult with you. We love to partner with people and have those discussions to give them the help that they need. So we appreciate it. Thank you for attending, and we'll look to talk to you again soon.